Speaking of amazing times, it was not the last milestone of 2017 as you transitioned to the new studio. Let's have a look at that clip together.
The good thing about facing your fears is that it gets easier every time.
You know, I'm a little obsessive and a little relentless, and I just knew this was the right path. I had a gut feeling, even though it made no sense financially.
This is the biggest challenge of my life, taking London Real to the next level. And I'm afraid again.
Gotta have a dream, man. Gotta have a motherfucking dream, man. But if you have that dream, there's nothing that can stop you. And now we're on a mission. To quote the Blues Brothers, we're on a mission from God, and there's nobody that can stop that.
Afraid of losing everything we've built. Afraid of forgetting my true message. Afraid of all the sacrifices I'll have to make. But I learned something on this journey. Your fears are only phantoms. Or as Dan says, false expectations appearing real. Fear is a good thing. It's a requirement if you want to change and grow. Where will we be in 1 year? I don't want to recognize us.
So the new studio is where we are right now, and it was a big difference than the video you saw of me with Julian and Luis, where it was literally my old flat. And it was literally, they were throwing us out of the building because it was like a residential. They were complaining. First they thought we were filming porn in there. Then they said it was an American radio show, whatever that means. And they were just like, what are you doing in there? We had like 12 people in there in one bathroom, and it was just, but it was time to step things up. And we got this new place here. It was like a concrete shell, and we designed it and we built it, and we couldn't afford it. And that's been the story of London Real. Like this made no sense. And if it wasn't for some of my mentors telling me to introduce risk into my life, to get uncomfortable, we wouldn't have done this. And yet, if it wasn't for the studio, we couldn't have done everything we did. So again, it was one of the scariest things we did. The rent was like, what? Compared to the previous thing. And it was like desks and all these build out and the costs. But I just was like, all right, trust this process, invest in this now, put yourself at risk, and it's gonna pay off. And like, that's been the mantra of London Real. So a few of my mentors have taught me that over the years. Probably Dan Pena the most has basically said, you need to engineer risk into your life. And once I realized that, it was the biggest eye-opening moment I've ever had, because most people are too conservative and they're too scared. And as an engineer, I was taught to make sure bridges don't collapse and planes don't fall out of the sky. So I was taught to be extra careful with everything. On Wall Street, risk management, look after all the risk. What about the long tail, curve position? What about, so I'm constantly too careful, which means I don't take enough chances. Most people don't take enough risk in their life. And so I'm still trying to constantly put myself in these situations that seem ridiculous, potentially damaging, potentially costly. And that's the only way we can continue to grow and scale. As one of my mentors would say, the difference between success and failure is on the razor's edge. And you probably know this as being an entrepreneur. You have to push it every single day if you want to stay relevant. And so moving to this space was a big thing.
Was this the moment where you're like, okay, I'm using my savings to survive and make this a reality, where you're starting to think, okay, now I can live with London Real? Was it starting to? We were starting to get a business model. The academy was gaining traction, but it still was is that still going to allow it to massively scale? And is it going to continue? And so it was starting to happen, but still this was basically saying, this is going to keep going big for the next 5 years. And you're signing a lease for 5 years, and you're doing an investment in the thing. We'd never done that before. Everything we had done was always conservative. Barely afford to buy a camera, barely afford to buy the lights, barely afford to hire out the theater at the premiere. It was always done with whatever we could make. So this was like an investment in ourselves that proved to be one of the smartest things we ever did. So.